tracked my cheating wife to AP's house, informed his wife, and blindsided mine with divorce papers. It was a moment that would change everything. I had always trusted my wife, believed in our vows, and thought we had a strong relationship. But nothing prepares you for the crushing feeling of betrayal when you discover your partner has been unfaithful. I had suspected something was off, and the more I tried to ignore it, the stronger my gut told me that I was right. One night, I decided to follow her, track her movements in secret. What I uncovered shattered me. She was sneaking around behind my back, meeting with someone I had no idea existed, the affair partner. But it was not just about catching her in the act. What I did next would change everything for both of us. I tracked her to his house, informed his wife, and blindsided my wife with divorce papers. Do you think I took it too far, or did she deserve what came next? Stay tuned to find out. I never thought I would find myself in a position where I would be the one to discover betrayal in my marriage. My wife, Sarah, and I had been together for 7 years, and up until recently, everything seemed perfect. We had a nice home, stable careers, and we were working towards building a family. At least, that's what I thought. It started off small. Little things that seemed insignificant at the time. Late nights at work, sudden trips, or when she would avoid certain topics of conversation. But the more I paid attention, the more it felt like something was off. I tried to brush aside at first, convinced that I was just overthinking things. After all, relationships aren't always easy, and there are ups and downs. However, it became harder to ignore the nagging feeling in my gut. Sarah had always been an open book with me, so why was she suddenly so secretive? When I began noticing her phone buzzing more frequently and her behaviors shifting, I knew something wasn't right. There was no way to ignore it any longer. I needed answers. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I would have to investigate her life in ways I never thought I would, but I had to know the truth. I didn't want to just accuse her without proof. I needed hard evidence. I had to know if my instincts were right, or if I was letting my doubts ruin my mind. What I found, however, was something far worse than I could have ever imagined. Sarah and I met in college, and our relationship quickly blossomed into something serious. We were inseparable, spending most of our free time together. As time passed, we built a life that many people envied. We both landed great jobs, moved into a beautiful house, and talked about starting a family. To the outside world, we were the ideal couple. Everything was perfect, or so it seemed. The first cracks in our relationship appeared when Sarah got a new job at a marketing firm. It was a great opportunity for her career, but it also meant longer hours and more time spent away from home. At first, I was supportive of her ambition. I knew she loved her work, and I was proud of her for climbing the corporate ladder. However, I started noticing subtle changes in her behavior that made me uncomfortable. She became more distant and would frequently come home late or cancel plans we had made. When I asked about her day, her responses were short and vague. At the time, I brushed it off, thinking it was just the stress of her new role. But then came the nights when she would work late and leave her phone unattended, which of course raised my suspicions. I thought I was being paranoid, but the sense that something was wrong only grew stronger. One day, I overheard a conversation between Sarah and one of her co-workers, Adam, and the tone of it made me uneasy. They were laughing and joking, but there was an underlying tension that I couldn't quite place. I tried to shake off the feeling, but in my gut, I knew something was going on. It wasn't until I took the step of tracking her activities and watching her more closely that the pieces started falling into place. The truth that I was desperately trying to avoid was staring me in the face. My wife was cheating, and the man she was involved with was none other than her co-worker, Adam. It started with small things, tiny inconsistencies that I could never quite ignore. Sarah's behavior became increasingly suspicious, but I had no concrete proof. I tried to convince myself that I was being overly paranoid, but deep down, I knew something was off. The gut feeling kept gnawing at me, and eventually, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I knew I had to get concrete evidence before making any accusations. I could not risk looking like a jealous, insecure husband. I started by keeping an eye on Sarah's schedule. I paid attention to the hours she was coming home late, the little white lies she told about her whereabouts, and the vague details about her day. Every time I asked, she would get defensive, brushing off my concerns with excuses that felt rehearsed. But then came the day that everything changed. I was at home one evening when I received a notification on my phone. Sarah had left her laptop open, and for the first time in weeks, she had forgotten to lock it. I hesitated for a moment, feeling guilty about snooping, but my instincts were louder than my conscience. I opened her laptop and immediately went to her browsing history. It was full of searches for romantic getaways, restaurants she had never mentioned, and even strange, cryptic messages from an account I did not recognize. I clicked on one of the messages and discovered something I had not expected. There, in the chat history, were explicit messages between Sarah and Adam, her co-worker. They talked about their meetups, their secret plans, and their desire to keep things hidden. I could not breathe for a few moments. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. Sarah had been cheating on me with Adam for weeks. Feeling numb and betrayed, I closed the laptop and sat down to process everything. It was overwhelming. I had spent years building a life with this woman, and now I was staring at the harsh reality of her betrayal. I had always thought I knew Sarah, but now I was beginning to question everything. How could I have missed the signs? How could I have trusted her when she was lying to my face? But this wasn't enough. I needed more proof, something undeniable. That's when I decided to do something I had never considered before. I would follow Sarah. I needed to confirm her infidelity with my own eyes. If I was going to confront her, I needed to be armed with the truth. The next few days were filled with tension. Sarah's behavior was becoming more erratic as she continued to lie and cover up her tracks. She would act distant, then suddenly overcompensate with forced affection, making it even more apparent that something was wrong. I knew that this was a moment to act, and I could not afford to waste any more time. I followed her on one of her late-night business meetings. I parked my car a few blocks away from the restaurant she claimed to be working at. I could not shake the feeling of betrayal as I watched her walk toward the front door of the restaurant. As soon as she stepped inside, I texted her, pretending to be my usual self, asking about her dinner plans. Her response came quickly. Just a quick meeting. I will be home soon. But as I looked through the restaurant's window, I saw Sarah laughing with Adam at a corner table. Leaning in close to him, my heart sank. This was the moment that shattered all illusions. I could not unsee it. The two of them, so comfortable with each other, as though they had no care in the world. I felt an overwhelming wave of anger and hurt, but I remained calm. This was my proof. This was my chance to finally expose her. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching them interact. The laughter, the flirting. It was all too much to bear. I knew I had to act fast before they realized I was there. The worst part was that they had no idea I was watching. They continued to talk, oblivious to the fact that their secret was no longer safe. I sat in my car, feeling completely numb. I wanted to confront them right then and there, but I knew I needed to be strategic. I had to plan my next move carefully. I waited for them to leave. When they finally stood up, I followed them discreetly as they walked out of the restaurant. I felt my heart pounding in my chest as I watched Sarah and Adam say their goodbyes. I could feel my anger boiling inside, but I stayed composed. I knew that now was not the time to make a scene. Instead, I would let them think everything was fine, at least for a little while longer. That night, I didn't confront Sarah. I didn't say a word. Instead, I waited for the perfect moment to expose her, when I had all the cards in my hand. The next day, I took action. I confronted her with the evidence. The texts, the messages, the undeniable proof. There was no escaping it. Sarah tried to deny it at first, claiming it was just a work friendship. But deep down, we both knew the truth. The truth that I had caught her in the act. The truth that I had been betrayed. The moment Sarah saw the text, she froze. Her face turned pale as the reality of the situation hit her. I watched her as she tried to compose herself, but it was clear she was struggling. Her usual confidence, the woman I had once known, seemed to vanish in an instant. I sat across from her, my hands trembling with anger and disappointment. But I remained calm. This was my moment, and I had to make sure she understood the full weight of her actions. How long, Sarah? I asked, my voice steady but cold. How long were you planning to keep this from me? She avoided my gaze for a moment, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. It was just a mistake, she said, her voice wavering. I never meant for it to go this far. A mistake? I echoed, my voice rising slightly. A mistake is forgetting to buy groceries or being late for dinner. What you did was betrayal, and you knew exactly what you were doing. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but they did nothing to soften the anger that was bubbling inside me. She had betrayed my trust, and I was no longer interested in hearing her excuses. There was no going back from this. The woman I thought I knew was a stranger, and the person sitting before me was a liar. I trusted you. I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. I gave you everything, and you threw it all away for him, for someone who doesn't even care about you the way I do. Sarah looked away, her face flushed with shame. Please, don't say that. I was confused, and I didn't know what I wanted. I never meant to hurt you. You hurt me in ways you will never understand. I replied, my voice thick with emotion. You lied to me for months, and now everything we built is shattered. I want you to understand that this isn't just about the affair. It's about the complete lack of respect you had for me and for this relationship. There was a long silence between us as she sat there, her shoulders hunched, unable to look me in the eye. I could feel the tears threatening to come, but I held them back. I was done feeling sorry for her. This was about me now, and I was ready to take control. You're right, she said quietly, finally looking up at me. I made a terrible mistake. I never thought it would get this far. I didn't want to hurt you. Well, you did, I said, cutting her off. And now you'll pay the price. I could see the panic setting in as Sarah realized the full extent of my resolve. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. There was no comfort for her now. There was nothing she could say that would change what had already happened. Are you going to tell him? She asked, her voice desperate. Adam, are you going to ruin his life too? I chuckled bitterly. Ruin his life? Sarah, he has been ruining my life for months, and I've had enough. You and he both made a choice, and now you both will face the consequences. Her face crumpled as she realized there was no way out. She had crossed a line, and now she had to pay for it. I had already made up my mind. The moment she had walked into this room, I knew what I had to do. I had to take control, and I had to make sure this didn't end with just an apology. Without saying another word, I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers. I laid them on the table in front of her. Her eyes widened in shock as she looked from the papers to me, unable to comprehend what was happening. You're divorcing me? She asked in disbelief. Yes, I replied, my voice unwavering. You betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I will not stand for it. We're done, Sarah. Her hand trembled as she picked up the papers, scanning them quickly. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Instead, she just sat there, staring at the divorce papers, unable to comprehend the finality of the situation. You really think you can just walk away from this? She asked, her voice cracking. You think it will be that easy? I don't think it will be easy, I answered, my gaze hardening. But it's what you deserve. You betrayed me, and now you have to live with the consequences of your actions. Sarah broke down in tears, her sobs filling the room. But I remained stoic. I had no sympathy left for her. She had thrown everything away for a fleeting affair, and now she had to face the fallout. I wasn't the one who had ruined our marriage. She had done that on her own. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did, I said, my voice low and filled with resolve. I'll make sure Adam's wife knows the truth, and I'll make sure your career suffers for it too. Her eyes widened, the horror evident in her face. No, please, she begged. Don't do this. I made a mistake. I'll do anything to make it right. It's too late for that, I replied, standing up and grabbing the divorce papers. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. I walked out of the room, leaving Sarah to contemplate the wreckage of her choices. I had made up my mind. She would face the consequences of her actions, and I would ensure that Adam and his wife would know the truth. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I knew I had done the right thing, but there were still moments when doubt crept in. I had just ended my marriage, a chapter of my life that I thought would never come to an end. But every time I remembered the look on Sarah's face when she realized I was serious, I knew there was no other choice. I didn't speak to her much after that night. She tried calling, sending texts, but I blocked her number. There was nothing left to say. I wasn't going to fall for the apologies and promises of change. She had already shown me her true self, and there was no going back. But it wasn't just the divorce that haunted me. It was everything that came after. The fallout from Sarah's affair didn't just affect our marriage. It affected everything around us. Friends, family, and colleagues were all asking questions. Some of them were supportive, offering their condolences, while others couldn't seem to understand why I was making such a drastic decision. I knew that I would need to make sure the truth was known, and I wasted no time. The first person I called was Adam's wife, Jessica. I wasn't interested in causing a spectacle or making this a public affair, but I knew that Jessica deserved the truth. When I called her, I could hear the tension in her voice as she picked up. I did not beat around the bush. Jessica, this is Adam's affair partner's husband. I need you to hear me out, I said firmly. There was silence on the other end before she responded. What do you mean? Who are you? Sarah is cheating on me with your husband, I said bluntly. I know this is going to be hard to hear, but I thought you deserved to know. For a few seconds, there was only silence. I could almost hear her processing the words, try to understand what I had just said. Then came the sound of muffled sobbing. I had no idea, Jessica choked out. How could he do this to me? I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but there was no going back. You deserve to know, Jessica, and I'm sorry that it came to this, but Sarah and Adam have both betrayed us. You deserve better than this. I stayed on the phone for a little longer, offering support where I could, but I knew that the damage had already been done. I had made sure she knew the truth, and now it was her decision how to proceed. But I could not allow myself to dwell on that. I had my own life to rebuild. Next, I turned to Sarah's work. She had been proud of her career, and I knew how much it meant to her. That, too, was going to be affected by her actions. It was not out of revenge, but rather to hold her accountable. I reached out to her workplace, anonymously at first, detailing everything I knew about the affair. It was an uncomfortable thing to do, but I believed that she needed to face the consequences of her betrayal in every area of her life. It wasn't long before Sarah lost her job. I did not feel satisfied by it, but I was resolute. I could not have her getting away with this, without realizing the full scope of her actions. She had shattered my trust and the lives of others. She needed to understand the gravity of it all. The final step came when the divorce papers were finalized. Sarah tried to contest the terms, but I stood firm. I made sure that the settlement was in my favor. There were no more compromises, no more chances. Sarah had pushed me to a breaking point, and now there would be no turning back. She tried reaching out again. A few weeks after everything settled, she sent a long email, an apology of sorts. She claimed that she had made a terrible mistake, that she regretted everything, and that she was seeking therapy to work through her issues. But it didn't matter to me anymore. Her words meant nothing. Action spoke louder than anything she could say. I had been through too much to let her back into my life. There was no going back from the hurt and betrayal she had caused. I had learned the hard way that sometimes people show you who they really are, and you have to take them at their word. And Sarah had shown me exactly who she was. She wasn't the woman I had married. She was someone completely different. As for me, I focused on rebuilding my own life. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to move on. I spent more time with friends and family, surrounded myself with people who cared about me, and slowly started finding joy in the things that had been lost in the chaos of the affair. I was determined to make my life better, without Sarah in it. I found solace in knowing that the truth was out, that both Sarah and Adam had to face the consequences of their actions. It wasn't revenge that motivated me. It was a need for justice, for balance, and for closure. Over time, things got easier. I found peace in knowing that I had done what was right for me. I was no longer a victim of her betrayal. I had taken control of my life again. And in the end, I was stronger for it. In the end, I realized that no matter how much it hurt, sometimes people show their true colors, and it is up to you to decide how to handle it. I had been through the worst, but I came out stronger, more aware of what I truly deserve in life. Sarah's betrayal was painful, but it taught me one of the hardest lessons. Never settle for someone who does not value you. As I moved forward, I rebuilt my life, one step at a time, and found peace in knowing that I did what was necessary. I held both Sarah and Adam accountable for their actions, and while it wasn't easy, I could finally breathe again. In the end, I was able to move on, and I could not be prouder of the person I had become. Now I ask you, what would you do if you discovered your partner's betrayal? How would you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story and want to hear more, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.